Hey everyone, thank you again so much for continuing to listen into Judgment Free Zone. I can't thank you all enough. Last week, I had Katie on and we talked about getting together and speaking again. We totally did that, and I was really new to doing the whole podcast thing at the time and deleted it. I don't know how I did it or what I did, but I did. So this week you're going to hear part 1 of talking about plant medicine between Kurundi and I, and in a couple weeks I will have part 2 with Katie, and we're actually meeting with Rebecca again, and all three of us are going to sit down and chat. So I hope you guys continue to tune in and enjoy today's podcast, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye. Well, guys, that's part 1. Listen in next week for part 2. Hey friends, it's Abigail Avisi. Welcome back to Judgment Free Zone. We need vulnerability and empathy now more than ever. I hope you are able to find room for more curiosity, self-compassion, and empathy for yourself and others while you're here. I show up so you can too. Okay, guys, welcome back to Judgment Free Zone. I have Kurundi here today, and she sent me this beautiful bio about her, and I just can't do it justice. Like, I can't just read off of a paper about you. So I really, I really just, we were already sitting here talking, and I was like, I need to just hit the record button. Like, we weren't even talking about what we're going to talk about today, but Kurundi is just like, you're amazing. And I am like, I know that we were starting to life coaching certification together. And so our paths crossed when I went to the Finding Peace retreat back in March. And I like kick myself. I told you this last week. I kick myself not being in your presence more. And I'm so thankful and honored that I get to now be continuously, because like, you just are such a beautiful soul, and I am so thankful to learn and grow from you and heal with you together on our journey. And I can't wait for people to hear more about your story, and I can't wait for you. Nobody's gonna know what we're talking about today. It's so fun. My husband is like so excited for this podcast, by the way.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah. So tell us about yourself. Let's just go into it. Let everybody learn some about Kurundi.
It's so easier for you to read it off. It's, you know what? It's so weird to talk about yourself.
I know. It can be, yeah, for sure.
It's so weird to talk about yourself. I don't know where to start. Read the bio, darling. If you haven't, read it.
Read it.
And then I can pick and choose from there.
You do so much. Like,
exactly. So where do you start? You telling me like
you have, I don't even know where to start. Like, like, it's so, you just have so much to give and so much knowledge, and like, between your own healing, like, I can't wait to hear more about your story, like with the military and the nursing, but you're in massage, like all of it. Like, I could probably sit here for hours just to hear about your story and your book. Like, how did that even like come about? Like, you're becoming a shaman, like, which I know is still like going your journey, and I can't wait to hear more about that. Like, it's been killing me not to even text you and be like, well, what's going on? Like, you're leaving, you're going to South Africa next week. Like, I want to know all of these things.
Well, okay. So you said it in a nutshell. So
yes.
Let's go back. First of all, the thing that I'm most proud of is just being a mother. Being a mother of 3 beautiful adult children now. They're all adult children, 31, 30, and 24. Wow. And 4 grandkids and 4 and a grand pup. Dakota, my labradoodle, my grandkid labradoodle. So that's what I'm most so proud of, because my family keep me so grounded, and they give me so much support. They've always given me so much support. And everybody can't really say that, you know. The path that I have been chosen to walk is not a natural path, rather. It's not a path that everyone is called to do. So it can be looked at as, oh my gosh, like they could be like, Mom, what the, can I curse?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the hell are you doing? You know, what the hell? So it started off for me. I was in the military. I went in when I was 18, and I retired from 21 years of doing service um, at the age of 39.
Wow.
At
And thank
that
you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
And at that time, in that 21 years, I had been married twice. Well, I call it one and a half. There's a story behind that one. So one and a half of one. That's a whole story. And I was married, and of course I had started having my children in the military. So they are, you know, the army brats, that's all they know is military. So when I decided to retire, my oldest two was in college, and was my oldest two in college? I think no, my oldest was in college. My middle son was going to college, about to go to college, and my youngest son was in middle school. So I was like, okay, I feel like I want to retire, but maybe I should wait until my last child get into high school or something. But I've always my life has always been guided by God for
Mhm.
me. Everything I've done in my life, it has not been because I said, I want to do this one day, or I want to, except for traveling, but it was like, it was never, I want to go into the military. It's always been, I skipped school, I skipped class one day and took the test to go into the military just to skip class,
Yeah.
pass the test or whatever. Later, all of us, literally one day was like, you need to go into the military.
Wow.
And I'm like, and when I say literally, um, I I have a gift of hearing. I have a gift of intuition.
Yeah.
And and I heard that call, and I've always had a great, beautiful relationship with God, you know, great prayer life. And so I know when I hear God speaking to me. And it was like military. And I'm like, military? I was a girl who didn't wear heels to school every day, didn't get had long fingernails and very prissy. So the military. So I decided to go into the military. And my dad was like, you military? I'm like, yeah, I know, right? Went in, and the call was so deep, was I graduated high school and didn't wait for the summer to pass before I went in. I went right after high school during the summertime, because I knew if I didn't go then, I probably wouldn't have gone. So I went in and did that. So went in that way. So I was called there. So by the time went through the military, that's a whole nother story in itself. I'll skip that. It was time for me to exit the military and to retire. And by this time, my children have been married. So I grew up in the military from 18. My whole adult life was
Mhm.
military. That's all I knew. And anybody that is military, they call outside of the military like the civilian world,
Right.
right? That civilian world. So I didn't know the civilian world as an adult. And I was blessed in the military. My last 10 years, I was a chef to the general. So if you know anything about the military, was the commanding general to a post that you live on is like the president of the United States it's like that. So they
Okay.
like a big person, and I was his personal aide and chef. So I didn't have to wear a uniform. I worked at his house. I did all of his huge dinner parties. I got
Wow.
the chance to cook for the late General Colin Powell, who just passed away. I got a chance
Wow.
to do some work with President Bush when he came to Georgia. So it was a beautiful thing. So when I got out the military, I had great credential. My words are tied.
Like accolades, credentials,
I had
like
credentials. Thank you. I had great credentials, and I had interviews at the White House to be the chef at the White House.
wow.
Yeah, and I got out and didn't take any of it
Why?
because I heard the call again.
Ugh.
Got out, didn't take any of it, and everyone thought I was crazy. It was like, what are you doing? I said, what I feel like I need to do. I'm here and I need to take a year off and just see my family. 18 to 21 years of traveling in the military. You're not with your family all the time. So I wanted to find out who I was. I just really wanted to find myself. And I started working for this little, how you have like the Mary Kay companies, those types of company. I
Yeah.
was working for this company called Soul Purpose. So happened it was called Soul Purpose. And it was natural products. And it was like body scrubs and stuff like that. And so I started selling this, and everybody thought I was bum crazy. You get out the military, you got top security clearances, you got this great place to work, you got opportunities, you got accolades from all the 5 to 6 generals I worked for. All you got to do is pick up the phone and get this, and you're here selling body scrubs.
Oh my gosh.
You're selling body scrubs, and you got 2 kids in college and one in middle school. Like, what the hell are you doing? But I've never felt so free.
Yeah.
I never felt so happy. It was like weights had dropped off, and and coming out the military, you get disability. I didn't get 100%. At the time, I had like 30%. So that means I had 30% of my income coming in. So it wasn't like I was making big money. I still had the same bills I had in the military. But you know what? God provided. He provided. It seemed like during that time I lived life better with less money.
Yeah.
Everything was taken care of. So I did that for a year. Soul Purpose. Decided how long we got, because it's
We got time. I'm in it. I'm like, tell me more.
oh my
Like,
gosh, the story is crazy. So in this time, I got as I was doing a lot of visiting, I got back in touch with my first love, like my high school sweet, not did I say high school? Oh my gosh, no. Elementary school sweetheart. My first
wow.
boyfriend in 5th grade,
Oh,
right?
oh,
I,
girl, you're gonna stress me out. My daughter's in 6th. Don't.
yeah. See, I was in New York. A little, so I wouldn't recommend that. But it wasn't that type of boyfriend. It was more in our day, it was just, hey, how you doing? And that type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, maybe a kiss on the cheek here, but it was nothing else at that. But I love this man. I love this guy. I loved him and he loved me. I knew it. And the thing is, so I got in contact with him, and because we was like from 5th grade, and then I was in North Carolina, and then I had to move to New York, and we kept in contact. So Facebook was new at that time for me.
Yeah.
Found him on Facebook. So we had been seeing each other, not as dating, just as friends, just kind of catching up. And it was a trip. I was coming back to Georgia, and his mother called me and said that he was in an accident. He was in the grocery store. The grocery store got robbed, and he was shot in the back. She calls me. Now, at this time, he was dating. He had a girlfriend, and had his own life going on, and just friends. And so he's in the hospital, and they call me. So I drive down to North Carolina. I was just retired. I had already retired, so I had some free time, and I ended up staying in the hospital with him the whole summer. He didn't want nobody else there, and to help him recover. He was paralyzed. He's still paralyzed on one side. And when I was in the hospital with him, again, I heard it again, go to school to do the CNA. And that's how I ended up leaving that summer, coming back to Georgia, enrolling in college to become a CNA, because that's what I was doing. I was helping the nurses with him. So I became a CNA, did that. So
That's
I had
not little thing. Like that's like that's a big thing.
yeah. I guess when you're in it, I guess when you're living it, it seems like, okay, I did this. But yeah, it's like everything was life changing for me because I was listening. There was no, oh, I need to go do this. I need to go this. So that's what I was listening to. And I said, okay, so I go back to school. I do see it. I get through the course. And I was top student in my one of the top students in my class. And my professor said, you need to be an RN. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I can do that. And I was preparing to take there's a called a TEAS test that you have to take to become into the RN program. And I was getting towards the end of that. And the next day I had to take that TEAS test. And again, I'm in my car and here it comes again. That's not it. That's not it. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. I have to take this test tomorrow. What am I supposed to do? And massage therapy literally dropped into my spirit. And I never gotten a massage prior to this. Didn't know what massage was about, never gotten a massage. So I Googled massage therapy. I'm thinking I have to, go to Atlanta. I'm in Columbus, Georgia, which is like an hour and a half away. And it just so happened there was a school right here in Columbus that a program was starting the same time I was finishing my class for the classes that I was in. I didn't take that TEAS test. The next day I told my professor that I was not taking it, and he thought I was crazy. He was like, are you serious? You just went through all of this. You're a top student. You'll be a great nurse. Why aren't you going to take this test? And I'm like, I gotta follow my heart, and that's not it. I love health, but I don't want that. I knew I wanted more holistic. I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know what it was. And I ended up I finished that course, didn't do the RN, went to massage therapy school. And when I got to the main part, not just the massage therapy, but you have classes, anatomy and all that. But when I got to the class was Eastern Chinese medicine.
Mm.
The energy class, it was Eastern Chinese medicine. When I got into that class, Abigail, I cried in the class every day because all the stuff that I was learning, innately, I knew it. It was me.
Yeah.
It was like a language that I didn't know the language to, but I knew it when I heard it. And when my teacher started to teach this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like it was like something hit and it was me. It was like natural. It
Yeah.
was so natural to me. So that's how I end up getting into this life of massage therapy, and went through school, and I didn't go work for anyone. I opened up my own shop. I started off in a room with a friend and just start giving out massages for free. Just start giving them out for free. Just put as many hands I can, how many bodies I could put my hands on. From there, word of mouth got out, and I rented another space, and then it grew from a one room to a 2-room suite to the building that I'm in now, which is like 2 buildings now. That is a holistic center. And in all of that, I've always had a love of the energy work in all the whole body, not just the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body itself.
Mm.
and it's really the aura, all of that Eastern way of thinking. So that's how I ended up, coming into this space. And you get to a pinnacle, you get to a place where you think you're there, right? I'm thinking,
Right.
okay, I'm there. I'm at that space. I did some, I had some people that I was working with here for a while. Then we had a fire
Mm.
in this building that I had. We had a fire. Um, Everything was pretty much destroyed.
Oh,
And so I had to start over. And I'm like, okay. So I had a second building in the back. So I started doing my massage there. The people that I was working with, the partners I was working with, they had to move on. They couldn't continue on with me. So they moved on. So I continued on with the call or the path. And you know what? Have you ever seen the movie Frozen?
oh, yeah.
Okay. So have you seen Frozen 2?
Yeah.
Okay, you know how she was hearing the call?
Yeah.
That's how my whole life has been.
I feel like I'm Olaf right now. I'm like the part in Frozen when Olaf's like, yeah, why? Yeah, why? Like that's me right now to you. Like, yeah, why?
That's what I've been hearing this call and no one else hears it. And I hear it in my heart. And I'm like, I got to do this. And it's everything that I've done has been like major jumps, like totally switches. And it's like, oh my goodness. But God has been taking care of me. So when the fire came again, now it's destroyed, everything is, I went to this silent retreat, and I'm skipping
Silent.
a silent retreat.
That sounds
So I
scary
went to the
already.
silent retreat because I needed some time at the time, and that's the part that you read about in my book called Born into Suffocation.
Mm.
Um, you read about all that, but that book was written at that silent retreat because I was so stressed at that time. It was the year 2016. We had a fire in September. My father had just passed in July. Um, so many things was happening all at one time, and I thought I was just like was going to lose it. And I went to this silent retreat, and I remember coming from, there was a poem that was read. It's like parts of it is silent where you read certain things, certain poems, and then the rest of the day you can't talk or anything. I went back to my room and I cried and I typed and I wrote that book in the night
Wow.
because I was hearing it was my life, but I got to give the credit back to God on how to pin it, how to put it together.
Mm-hmm.
I gave my experiences, but he did something, with that. And I wrote that book in that night, and that was um, beginning 2017. And so that's how that ended up happening.
So I have a question.
Yes, please stop
Oh,
me. But
thank you so much for everything you're sharing already. Like your story, I'm just like questions. You speak, and I know you know that I have spiritual abuse, and I've touched on it a little bit with you. And you talk about, not that I want to go into that at all at the moment. I'm just saying for
that's
people,
fine.
but you speak of God a lot. And
Mhm.
so were you raised in a religious home?
I was definitely raised in church. I was church from the rooter to the tutor. I did everything in church. And even in that, that's a big step from the church to where I am now.
Well, that's why I'm curious. Like to
Yeah.
me, those are like really big, like they're differences. And I know again, we're just so my people listening know we're going to be talking about plant medicine and shamanism, and that's where we're kind of heading to. So that's why I'm curious, and maybe that's a good way to kind of go into that. Like, how does that, because those are two really big,
Yeah.
usually when you hear that you don't hear God, and so that's why I'm curious, because you do talk about God a lot. Like how does that play out for you in your life or others?
For me, I can only speak
Yeah.
for myself,
Yes.
because for me, I grew up in church, Pentecostal, speaking in tongues,
Yeah.
all of that, right?
Yeah.
And I don't knock it to this day. It was definitely a beautiful foundation for me, to just to have that relationship with God, not the church,
Mm-hmm.
with
Oh,
God Himself, not necessarily the church. And there's a difference.
right.
The difference is everything you get when you get to the church, you rely on everything from the church. But when you get home, it ain't there no more. You live in a whole separate life. For me, I was definitely involved in church in many ways, but I always had this specialness with God, this prayer. I would talk with Him all the time. I'd be out. I remember a little girl being out in the with my grandmother's, like down south in North Carolina in the fields, and just talking to God all the time. So it was always a deep relationship. So that's when I was saying earlier, I know the voice of God for me.
Yeah.
I know when He's speaking because I know it from from a child. So the same time that I got the military is the same time I really stepped away from the church, and I literally um spoke to one of my pastors and told him I needed more. God was calling me to do things outside of the building of the church. He was calling me to reach people in a different way,
Mm.
but not this way. I felt like it was too boxed in. I felt like for me that they were boxing God into just this, like God can't do this. He can only do it in this way, and in this format. It can only be A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. He can never skip from A to Z. It's
Mm.
like, and I'm like, the God I've always known can do whatever and anything.
Mm.
And He loves everyone. And the churches that I grew up was very discriminative. You know, you can't go to this church and you can't go to that church and you can't do this and you can't, and everything was fear.
Mm.
And I'm like, the God
Yeah.
that I know was full of love.
Mm.
Like, oh my gosh, why is everything so fearful and judgmental?
Yeah.
So when I left, I didn't leave God. I
Right.
left the church.
Yeah.
And I listened. And when I left, it was like, this is where God has been leading me because I've been obedient. And some of the things I even questioned, like, oh my gosh, you want me to do this or that? Like, okay. But so far, He's never led me in the wrong spot.
Mm.
I found the further I have gone on my journey, I feel the closer I'm getting to God, even more.
Yeah.
Even more, even plant medicine, even shamanism. I see God in everything. I see God in the nature. I see God in the trees. I
Mm.
see God in different cultures of people where they believe this way and that way, but you get to know the people in their heart.
Mm.
You're like, oh my gosh, we're the same.
Yeah.
We just speak different languages. I may say God and you may say universe and somebody else may say Allah. But when we really get down to the core of it, we're speaking the same thing and we're speaking about the same God. And at the end of the day, we all trying to get back to the presence of Him.
And why do you think people have such a hard, like, I'm just curious, like, why do you feel like maybe for you, like, people have a hard time with hearing that and saying, like, well, we're talking about two different gods then? You know what I mean? Like, have you heard that before? Because I feel like I hear that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I think it's fear, and I think there's fear around it. And when you grew up a certain way, you are really afraid to think that whatever you learned growing up was wrong.
mm,
It's like, it's almost like, oh, I was wrong all this time. And and I don't even like to use the word wrong. I don't think it's about being right or wrong. I believe that we have to get where we have to get to on our path. So even me coming up in the church, I don't regret it because it got me to here,
right.
right? It got me to have that relationship with God. But the thing is, we have to, I feel like people need to open up their minds and their hearts a little more and learn beyond what they think they know. The Bible gives us great references, and it gives us great references, and it's a living Bible. It's not like a book that you read and it's living words. So that means it's gonna minister to you differently than it ministers to you than it's gonna minister to me.
Yeah.
And the way it shows up sometimes is like it's cookie cutter, like every human is exactly the same, and what you get, everybody got to go by the exact same rules, like we robots.
Yeah.
And that's not the way I see God in my life. I'm not here to tell anybody how to see God in their lives, but I know the manifestations of what he has brought in my life. I see him every day.
Yeah.
I see God every day in my life, and I see the fruits of the labor. Because God said, you'll know me by my fruits.
Yeah.
And I see the fruits that has been bore from all the things I've done and stepped out to do.
How do you face, if you do face, again, I'm only I can just, again, because I was raised in a very Pentecostal home as well. And, I've been all across the board. I was Mormon at a time. And I went to a Calvinist um church in high school. And so again, I'm just, thinking about how, or have you faced like people coming at you with what you are choosing to do now with shamanism? Like, how do you face that? Are you being questioned about?
You know what? I don't know whether I'm being questioned yet.
Okay.
It's so new. I think nowadays people are like this. They're whispering. They're probably all out there whispering like, what is she out there doing?
I mean,
You
I
know,
think it's awesome.
especially because I'm still in the same town that I went to church in, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was very deeply in church. I was I was a part of the women's ministry. I was doing a lot, and I was doing a lot of the same things in church that I'm doing now. Like I was really ministering. And the only difference now than the church is now, I can speak more openly about real life. In church, I feel like my tongue was tied. They only want to talk about little things. You can't smoke, you can't do this. But what about fornication? What about people being abused in their homes? What about abuse? Nobody wanted to talk about that. It was a big hush hush. Ooh, sorry.
Nope, you're good.
It was like a big hush hush. So now I get to talk about it a little bit more. So am I facing people? I don't think no one has really just came to my face and said, you're going to hell,
Yeah.
right? Oh, the phones are ringing now.
I know, right? They're trying to take us off track of what we're talking about, right? Isn't that crazy?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
The phones are like going everywhere, but that's okay. So no one has really just came to me and said, Kurundi, you are just damned and going to hell. What I have gotten from people who I was surprised, where I'm seeing it in their lives, they're still coming for advice. They may do it secretly.
Yeah.
They'll maybe inbox and they're watching. But at the end of the day, Abigail, that's one thing I don't care, because I know my path. I know that out of anybody, if God told me to do it, I'm doing it. And that's the difference between my faith and someone else's faith. Because my faith is when I hear God, I'm going to move, I'm going to speak, I'm going to do it, right? A lot of times people question because it's not normal. Oh, well, I know God didn't tell me to do that. Are you sure?
Yeah. Well,
Are
I
you?
think we like live in such a, that peace that even in church, and again, like I do 100%, like my belief too is like, I don't know where I am with God right now. And I do believe in him. I just question a lot. I think that, that piece of like, we learn in so many ways not to trust ourselves. And I hear with you that you have that like deep intuition of that communication with him. And I think that even in church, that can get questioned so deeply, for myself. And I've heard stories from others of, even last night, I was having a conversation with someone, and someone had said to them, like, well, God told me this to do this. And,
Mhm.
when you're in conversation with us, and it would be like, for example, like, well, God told me that you shouldn't go to South Africa. Like, God's telling me something different. Have you heard that kind of dialogue in the church? You know what I mean? And for me, it's like, well, how about you bring it again back to you? Like, just like you said about the Bible, like the Bible could mean different things to us. And then we end up gaslighting each other with God as like he's the one
Right.
doing it. And it's like, whoa, what just happened? You know what I mean? It's like,
Well, how can you the way you can negate that is a lot of times when you know you've heard something from God and then someone probably 9 times of a higher authority who you may think would know more than you and would say,
right,
well, I didn't hear that from God. Then you go back because the thing is when you have a relationship with God, you know the voice of God. When you really start to have a relationship with God, and you question, you're like, listen, I know I heard this, confirm it for me. Sometimes, sometimes, and this is not cut and dry all the time. I'm speaking, this is life less, this is like lessons that you have to learn. Sometimes you may make mistakes and sometimes you may not. But even in those mistakes, God got you,
right,
especially if your heart is pure and really want the best. Like
right,
you really, like you're like a child following, like, I really thought I heard this, you
right,
know? So even if there's a mistake, God is going to cover you
right,
because he knew where your heart was at. So at the end of the day, folks, as far as that question, you got to know yourself. You got
right.
to know what it is that you know for you. Because a lot of times other people throw their fear off on you.
Yeah,
So they would say, well, I didn't hear that you don't need to go to South Africa. It's dangerous. It's this, it's that. Because that's your fear.
exactly. Yeah,
Don't
absolutely.
bring that fear onto me because this is my thing,
Right.
right? People told me I shouldn't be out in the Amazon jungle. What the hell are you doing out there? But that was the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. And other people,
Yeah.
because it's so fearful, they're so fearful, they would never step out to do anything. And I believe that because God knows my heart and because he know that I trust him, he sends me to do some of the most outrageous things
Yeah.
because
Right.
he know everyone is not going to follow. I was talking to a young lady the other day. I was like, I was following, I follow my passion, and she corrected me, and she said, "No, you are really following your path," and it really hit me because it
Mm,
is a path that I am. It's not passion can weigh out after a while. This is a path where some days it's like I'm
mm,
not always. Whoo, there's some days I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so dark. I don't know.
mm,
Am I on the
yeah.
right path, right?
No, that hit me. It's true because it is what we're doing. I mean, you and I are, doing this stuff together in different ways, and it can be like one minute you're like, this is what am I doing? But it's like then you're in it like right now, and it's like my fire, like my soul is on fire, like I'm loving it and I feel it, and I'm like, it brings you back to like, no, like it doesn't matter like what trench you're in, like you're gonna get out of it because it's just the path.
It's just it's just the path. And the darkness, I've learned that my darkness on my path is my trust meter. How
Yeah.
much more do you trust me when you're walking in the dark?
Mm,
How much
mm,
do you trust me when you can't see what's ahead of you?
yeah.
How much more will you continue to walk forward or you go backwards? Will you just drop it all or will you just stand still? Sometimes I have to stand still because I'm so in that space to really listen, but then I'm always moving forward and it's never fell thus far in my 51 years of life that
Mm,
I didn't come to a light and it's been better than I ever imagined when I finally got to the space of enlightenment and things were lighting up for me and things were showing up in my life. It was like, now I understand why I'm here.
Yeah.
And it's all beyond me. It's bigger than myself. I am literally doing the same thing as I've been doing in church. I am doing ministry in a different way.
Yeah.
To people who won't be heard in the church, not welcome in the church, or been in the church, right? And been damned and this and that because they had a question that didn't, because they rose their hand and said, I don't understand that. And can you explain that to me more? And then they got reprimanded because they asked the question.
Yes.
Why can't you ask questions?
Right. Well, that goes to what I was saying. Like, why, like, again, that piece of like questioning and like saying, like, well, I heard something different. Like, that's like full circle for me. It's like that like, you need to be able to ask. Like, we can't, if we keep getting shut down, how can we be curious and learn anything new?
Right.
Like, that's why I wanted to do, one of the big reasons I wanted to do this podcast is because your story, like, I'm so inspired already. Like, already you were inspiring me, and even more so now. Like, I have no words. I'm just in awe of your story and so thankful for what you're doing and continue to do. And just being able to sit with you is like, I'm all over the place. I'm like, there's no words. You're like, my brain is like going. And this is probably, I was sharing with you before we started. I was like, usually I have like an outline and I like go for things. And now I don't. And now I'm like, I don't even know what to say anymore. Like, I'm just going to sit back because you're just.
You know why? You know why? Because when God is in presence, when God is in the presence, and he's definitely in the presence, he knows exactly where it needs to go. And even this podcast, we're talking about, maybe we're getting into the ayahuasca, the shaman, but the deepness is for you, to minister to you.
Wow.
To really minister to you, to allow you to see that you can, you can trust what you're feeling. You said, I still question God. Continue to question God. God is like our father, right? And if our father say, stop questioning, you get to question your dad. Like, Dad, I don't understand. Help me understand. And if they love you, they'll try their best to explain it to you. Same thing with God. You question God. I always question. I always put it down. Okay, you said this. I want to see it. Like I'm challenging, because God wants us to do that. We're his children. We're not these people that he's just trying to damn and beat down. He's a loving God. And yes, he chastises, but what he does is because it's like our mom and our parents chastise for us to learn from it. So at the end of the day, I may be ministering in a different way, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the same core, the love of God, and trusting who you are with God, trusting your heart, trusting that relationship that you may have with God. And I challenge you to continue to question. And I give this, people who know me know I give the same quote, because it always comes back. When the student is ready, the teacher shall appear. And when you're ready to be a student of life, oh, God is going to show you, he's going to bring people into your life to answer every question that you may have. And when you get that answer, Abigail, it will be good in your soul. Whatever answer is good to your soul, you ride with that.
It's so crazy because, I tuned into your, when you were talking about the trip in Peru coming up in May. And what is your friend's name that did that with you? Zykia. I think it was her that said that, and this is something every time I talk about Ayahuasca, and that's how you also say that, right?
Mhm.
Ayahuasca. I think she was the one that mentioned that she calls to you the way that you guys talk about it, like in like person, like she's a person. And I found that so interesting that you've said like she calls to you. And I keep going back to this, like when you just said too, like that these things will be ready for you, and like the teacher. And I keep going to this moment where it's like all of my core beliefs right now when I'm working in therapy or on my roadblocks, they keep going back to that big question of like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is happening? Like, I don't understand. What is life? What is God? What is church? What are these trees? And I went to that retreat, like to the Finding Peace retreat, and it was like something did shift in me for sure. Like so many things. Gosh, Troy is amazing. But again, it just keeps going back to that. And then I met you and I was listening. I don't know if you've ever heard Sean Ryan. He's ex-military as well. And he went and did a psychedelic trip in Mexico and did DMT and something else.
Mhm.
And like was talking about that, and like it terrifies me. Like scares the living shit out of me to even think about like and doing any of that. But it's
Mhm.
like I feel like I am at the point where I've done so much work on myself, and I keep going back to this question. And like to me it's like when you said that she calls to you, and then when she calls to you she's going to keep showing up and she's going to keep presenting herself, and then someday you're going to do it. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like it scares me so much." Thanks, friends, for listening in. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. If you'd like to be more involved in our community, hop over to Instagram and find me at Abigail Levisi. Keep showing up. I will too. See you next time.